Hello. I wanted to jump on and talk to you about numbers. Woo! Specifically, numbers that you use to track your progress when you are tapping. Now, if you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, let me backtrack slightly. EFT tapping can be so effective that when you've done some, you can forget how fucking bad you were at the beginning before you did any. And that can lead people to think, well, I feel fine. Everything was fine. I felt fine then. I feel fine now. Clearly, EFT doesn't work. And it's something called the apex effect. And Dr. Peter Stapleton noticed this great effect when she was doing some studies with food cravings. And what happened was she got a load of people and they did these studies on food cravings and they used EFT and they hooked them up to brain machines so they could see parts of their brain lighting up and then turning off after they'd done tapping. And they followed up with those people a year later. Now, the study they did was specifically on chocolate craving. I know, who craves chocolate? Hardly anyone, but there you go. They did it on chocolate craving. And so she found that when she rang people, they answered, oh, yeah, it's Dr. Peter Stapleton. Oh, yeah, hello, how are you? And she said, I'm just ringing to find out how you're getting on a year later after doing that study for cravings. And there'd be a pause. And the person would say, oh, now I know I came to you and we did a study for cravings, but I can't remember what the craving was about or for. And she'd say, it was for chocolate. Was it? Oh, no, I haven't needed any chocolate for whenever. So it was a really curious thing that came about. So this is why it's so important to track. Not only so what you track and improves, you can measure it so you know you're headed in the right direction, but also just to show you that, hey, actually this is doing something. This is working. So that's why you take a number. So the way you use this with an emotion is before you start. Let's say you're tapping because you feel stressed. So before you start your tapping, you check in with yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the highest it could possibly be. How stressed are you? And make a note of it. And then you're going to do some tapping, and then you're going to check in with yourself again to find out what has happened to your number. Now, obviously, one of 3 things is going to happen to your number. Either it's going to go up, stay the same, or come down. Now, when you're tapping for a negative emotion, you're looking for the number to come down. So any decrease you get, fantastic. You are in the right direction. But what happens if your number stays the same or it goes up? Well, EFT is a little bit like detective work. And any feedback you get from it, in this case, the number, is a clue as to what's going on. So if your number stays the same, it's an indicator of a couple of things. The first thing is that maybe you're not getting specific enough. EFT works the best the more specific you can be. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we're thinking about about stress, a very broad and general setup statement for feeling stressed would be, even though I feel really stressed, I deeply and completely upset myself. That's great. Stressed about what? That's hugely broad, hugely general, and actually something to watch out for is when you are really feeling that emotion. If you go that broad and that general, you can actually flood yourself because it's like, oh my God, I'm just too overwhelmed. So something to be really careful about when you do the tapping for the emotion. A much more specific statement would be, even though I feel really stressed about what happened in the middle of the office at lunchtime yesterday, where my boss shouted at me in front of everyone for something that actually wasn't my fault, I deeply and completely accept myself. Can you hear the difference? Much more specific. And when we're talking specific, there's the 4 W's. You want to cover what. So what was it about? Where was it? When was it? And who else was there? So if your number isn't doing anything after you've done the tapping, try getting more specific. Really delve deep into the details. Get as pinpoint specific as you absolutely can, and see what happens with your number after that. Now, another reason why your number might not be dropping is because your subconscious has spotted a downside to allowing that intensity to come down. Now, this is particularly relevant when you are tapping for something like anger, particularly where the anger is at someone else and you feel that you have been wronged in some way, something was unfair. Because your little subconscious mind, although you logically know that staying angry at someone is like drinking poison and expecting them to die, your little subconscious mind doesn't know that and is really pissed off about it all. And it's come to the conclusion that if you allow the anger to decrease, it means that you are letting them off the hook. They are getting away with whatever it is they did. And so it's made a decision, fuck that shit. We are not allowing this number to come down. We're going to stay angry at them because that will show them we can't, what they did was so heinous, we can't possibly allow ourselves to feel better. And so it's going to hang on to that emotion. So the way around that can be something like just as ising it, even though I can't let go of this anger. Because if I do, part of me believes that that means that they're getting away with it. I'm condoning what they did. That's okay. I accept myself anyway. And then you can tap through the points addressing that fact, just as is your way through it. Say it as it is. And that's going to address that concern your little subconscious voice has about that, and then check in with it again. Now, there's a third reason why your number might not be coming down. It's very closely linked to the reason I've just given you. And it's that inside all of us, there is a stroppy teenager that does not want to be told what to do. You're not the boss of me. And so it's going to resist you. So again, you're going to as is it. You're going to address it, even though I've got a stroppy teen inside me and he will not be told what to do. That's okay. I accept myself and my teenager, even though you're not the boss of me and you can't tell me what to do. I won't let this number go. I accept myself anyway. And have a play with that. And then once you've done some tapping, check in with yourself again. What's happened to the number? Now, the third option is that your number ends up higher than when you started. Now, a more common thing that will happen is that during the tapping, your number will peak and then it will come back down again. Because remember, when you're tapping, you're sending a signal to your amygdala, which is a stress response center of your brain. And you're basically saying to it, chill the fuck out. So tapping will bring intensity down. But if you're not used to tapping, what can happen is you've suppressed these emotions for so long, is that as you start to acknowledge them, you're going to get a spike. And the temptation there is going to be to stop tapping because it doesn't feel very nice. We don't like to have that spike in emotion. Oh, it's uncomfortable, particularly if you're on your own. And so the temptation is, I feel worse. I'm going to stop. Which is kind of leaving it all kind of half done. You know, it's just kind of that emotion is all then just kind of sitting there. No matter how bad it feels, keep tapping. Because remember, tapping turns off your stress response. You don't have to necessarily say any words because when emotion is very high, it's very difficult to say stuff. You can just sit and tap. But do just keep tapping because I promise you the intensity will come down. And then you can start using words again and start to explore why that went up. Because the fact that your number peaks, particularly when it ends up higher than when you started, as opposed to just the peak and then coming back down again, it's time to get really curious. What did you say or think about that caused that to shoot up? Because that's going to be what you tap on next. Your subconscious is showing you where you're getting triggered by something. So don't worry about it. It's okay. It's a clue. Get curious about it. The great way to approach EFT, or in fact to approach anything in life, is with curiosity, kind of cool, calm, as detached as possible curiosity. That's really interesting. Why have I reacted that way? What was I thinking of? What was I saying to myself? What memory was I remembering? And so let's do some work on that next. Now, as a caveat to that, you can, and this is something I go into much more detail in my accredited course with tactical tapping. There can be something called an abreaction when you're tapping, and that's when either yourself or the person you're working with becomes flooded with emotions. That's one of the key reasons why we tend to go more specific than the very general I mentioned earlier. Going too general, too broad can make you feel like you're drowning in that emotion, whereas when you hone it straight in, you're making it much more narrow focused. So if this ever happens, and particularly if you're working with people, I can pretty much guarantee it's going to happen at some stage, particularly when you first start. Hey, it happened to me on a couple of occasions with clients, and you're going to go, because it is quite a reaction. There is a lot of emotion all of a sudden, all at once, and it's actually quite scary. But it's okay, because you have at the end of your arms these tools that you know work. You know for a fact, because it's evidence-based, it's been shown that EFT turns off the stress response. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It turns off the stress response. An abreaction is a very big form of stress response. And yes, when you're watching it, it can be very scary. But all you have to do is make sure that person's looking you in the eyes, they stay connected to you. You can ground them. Lots of people know how to ground people, just get them to really feel the connection of their feet on the floor, as invite them to hear whatever it is they can hear. Can they smell anything? What can they see? And as you do that, just get them to keep tapping. They don't have to be repeating anything you say, but direct them to ground them as you tap through the points, and allow EFT to do its job and allow that intensity to come down. So I'm just going to throw that in there because I think it's an important thing to know, because if it just suddenly happens, it's going to catch you off guard. But if you're on the ball and you're watching, or you're very in tune with how you're feeling, you will see it or feel it before it happens, and you can catch it. But again, that's something I go into much more detail in the actual course. So I hope that was useful. It's all about the numbers. So obviously at the end of a tapping session, one of three things will have happened to your number. It'll have gone up, stay the same, or come down. Whatever happens, you're not doing it wrong. It's clues. You cannot get EFT wrong, but you can make it much more effective. And the numbers and what they do are going to help you to do just that. So if your number is coming down, it's from negative emotion, fantastic, in the right direction. Keep on going with it. If your number stays the same, it's one of a few things. It's either you're not getting specific enough, it's the fact that there is some kind of downside to letting that number drop, or your stroppy teen has been unleashed. The third thing, if your number goes up, it's a clue. Get curious. What were you thinking about in the moment that the intensity went up? What were you thinking about or saying to yourself that caused that spike? So I hope that was useful. Keep your eyes peeled for more little top tips, and I'll see you very soon. Toodles.